Okay, here's what a healthy pantry looks like. It's geared for baking a lot of things. I use a lot of different flours, as you can see, and also I do a lot of fun baking for family and friends, like homemade cookies, so hence the irresistible nuts and semi-sweet chocolate, white chocolate, a lot of different kinds of nuts. I also do a lot of different flours. These are like pastry flours in bulk. I also do breads, so I have different flours like graham flour. I also have raisins, the ultimately not so good for you powdered sugar, but I use it sparingly. Graham cracker crumbs, or you can use your own graham crackers, grind them up. I also use my Karo syrup a little bit for hard candies and stuff, where I do use my molasses. I do a lot of different kinds of chocolates because they're really good for you. I also do my own tapioca pudding, so that's what real tapioca looks like. I dry my own herbs. So this is sage that I've done so far, oregano, it's hard to see. But then I also have great quantities of dried herbs that I use quite a bit. I try to stay away from white pastas if at all possible. I try to buy the wheat or even brown rice pastas, which are really a lot better for you. Flax seed, it's really good, especially if you grind it up. That's really the only way that you're supposed to use it, I believe. Another example, semolina flour. I use a lot of nuts and seeds. These are unsalted sunflower kernels, and I use them in salads, or I use them in things like coleslaws, things like that. That's kind of an overview of part of my pantry, and I will show you another one in just a second. Okay, here we go with another part of my pantries. I have several cabinets devoted just to ingredients. These are just some of my spices. It's an organic no salt seasoning from Costco, which is very good, very potent. Crushed red pepper, chipotle, walnut oil, one of my favorites for using with baking. I just brush it on instead of using spray or shortening to grease the pan. It gives it a really neat flavor. Basil and oregano. Rice vinegar is just a neat taste. I have plain rice vinegar. Red wine vinegar. Balsamic vinegar there in the back. I use canola spray for pans instead of frying. Paprika is a really great spice. I use a lot of panko instead of breadcrumbs. I happen to like it better, and it's lower in calories, and I think has a better flavor. I use kosher salt in everything I do. I never use iodized salt. It supposedly has less sodium than iodized salt. We use almond butter, peanut butter. I use these to make cookies, low fat, lower calorie. Let's be real, there's still calories in them. Some of my spices, I keep them in these trays so I can find them, hopefully, because I have so many. I have the usual standards as I listed, but I have a lot more, probably than most people, just because I cook so much. And I also have dried varieties that I've done myself, but I also have my own fresh when I can. This is my basil that I'll probably be finishing off today and getting another one before this one retakes. Rosemary is one of my favorites, and sage just goes wild here, so that's really good. I also dry a lot of fruits. These are organic apricots that I recently dried in my dehydrator. And these are some pears. I buy them in very large bags at Costco, and then I dry them myself. I also do that with apples, blueberries, whatever I can find on sale. This is one of my little favorite cheat things. My little chipotle chili cubes. They're hard to find sometimes, but they're really cool. You can crumble up as much as you want into soups or whatever. Oh, and we also dry mushrooms, which is really cool to add to stews and things. Dried chilies, we use those. So there's really, the sky's the limit for what you can have in your pantry, and depending on how much you cook and how into it you get, you can have cupboards and cupboards like I do. See you on the next one. Bye-bye. This would be my canned goods pantry. Yes, I have too many, but I do cook a lot, so that gives me a really good excuse to have all these things. I use Kalamata olives a lot. I do a lot of Mediterranean cooking. I buy these in quantity, obviously, at Costco. Another example of some of the whole grain pastas you can get. I try to buy all of it whole grain or brown rice, as I said. And I think after you get used to it, it's very palatable. I try to buy organic or low salt in stewed tomatoes, tomato sauce, tomato paste. We buy a lot of beans because we eat a lot of beans. We do a lot of meatless. For instance, tacos, we do beans instead of meat. And I buy organic taco shells or whole grain, whatever I can find. I do stock up on a lot of tomato products because we use a lot, and I do try to make sure they're either organic or low sodium. Coconut oil is something I've discovered recently. I even give it to my dogs. It's like a wonder oil. It's not really an oil, it's more like a shortening, but you can use it for stir-fry flavoring things. It's absolutely terrific. It's supposed to be really good for you. And like I said, we have a great variety of beans. I do stock up on a few cans of vegetables just in case I'm running behind and I need something quickly. Same with fruits. In the wintertime especially, it's kind of nice to have some if I don't have frozen. Broth, I always buy low sodium. I generally have vegetable, beef, and chicken. Sometimes I make my own and freeze it. I usually have some barbecue sauce on hand and a jam in case we have company. Rices, I do the rice blends, wild rice and blah blah blah, whatever. And quinoa, I use that. Some more pastas, more different kinds of dried beans. I do a lot of dried beans as well. I soak them and cook them and do them myself, but I keep the canned on hand just so we have it. We generally eat only brown rice, but every once in a while we do white rice, and then I try to add things to it to make it a little bit more nutritious, like vegetables or whatever. But generally we do brown jasmine rice. So that's it for that pantry. Okay, last but not least, here is my baking pantry that my daughter very carefully organized for me. I use a lot of cinnamon, so I buy it in big containers. I usually use stone ground cornmeal, but right here I have a variety that's very common in the stores. I use it for putting on the bottom of pans when I bake French bread or different kinds of breads. I also make cornbread. My cocoa I use is this kind of premium unsweetened cocoa, Dutch process. They say it has more flavor. I'm not sure, but I really like it. Different kinds of vanilla, Mexican, or I buy the pure vanilla at Costco. Baking soda, baking powder, brown sugar. I try to use brown sugar as much as possible and as little as possible on the sugars. Substitute raw sugars if you can. Little factoid, brown sugar is actually the same as regular granulated sugar. It's just darker. Has no better properties in it. Still just as bad for you. Another thing I use quite a bit is natural oat bran. Oat bran is actually just rolled oats ground down to bran consistency, so you can make your own. I buy it, but I use it, for instance, in pancakes or muffins, things like that, instead of flour, and it's much better for you. So that's a look at Audrey's Pantry, the baking extension, and I hope you enjoyed the little tour. Have a great day. Bye-bye.